In this video, we're going to look at the top 5 cities where Uber drivers and Lyft drivers make the most money. Now remember, like I've said numerous times, your location is the #1 factor that determines how much money you make as a driver. And going down here, as you can see, according to GridWise, the average gross earnings per trip were $15.42 when it comes to Uber, and then Lyft saw about $14.24 per hour. Now in terms of the tip, the average tip for an Uber driver was about $4.10 and $3.80 for Lyft. With that being said though, let's go into the top 5 cities. First off, San Diego. This actually, this would spark this whole idea for this entire video because I was doing a video about the Uber requirements and Lyft requirements for San Diego. And as you can see, $21.73 per hour on average in San Diego. That's pretty high. I will say I love San Diego. I live in LA and I look at San Diego as almost like a cleaner version of LA. I love San Diego. It's super beautiful. However, though, it's kind of a pros and cons aspect. As you can see here, living in San Diego is 47% more costly than the nationwide average. They call it the sunshine tax. Just the fact you're living in like in a beach area, super nice out, great weather, super beautiful, etc., etc. But I mean, $21.73 per hour on average, that's pretty awesome. Now going down here to the Bay Area, we have $21.61 per hour. I will say I'm kind of surprised the Bay Area is not #1. When I first started driving years ago, I heard, oh, if you live in San Francisco, you can make bank driving for Uber and Lyft in the Bay Area in general. So it is kind of surprising this is #2, but I mean, even still, $21.61 per hour. I mean, just insane. As you can see here, second highest paying area for rideshare drivers as the Uber and Lyft apps were born in Silicon Valley. Again, no surprise here whatsoever. However, and this is the big kicker, I think you have to look at the pros and the cons of San Francisco. The cost of living in San Francisco is 94% higher than the national average. San Francisco is the most expensive place to live. And in addition with all the, what do they call it? I think San Francisco snow. In case you don't know, that's people basically bashing in people's windows to get in their car and steal stuff. There's broken glass everywhere. My friend went for, I think, a day. He left his car alone for only 2 or 3 hours. All his windows are already bashed in and stuff stolen. So, yeah, maybe you can make a good amount per hour, but I personally would not want to live in San Francisco. I'd rather live in San Diego. I think it's better and you get more per hour. But continuing on, going down now, boom. Here in LA, on average, $21.23 per hour. LA is a very big area though. I'm not going to lie. One thing about LA that I think might be misleading when it comes to this amount is when I lived in Boston, I'm like, okay, Boston is the city of Boston. I know this sounds weird, but when I went to Chicago or Seattle or Portland or Miami, those are like cities. And I know it sounds weird. Anyone who lives in LA knows what I'm talking about, where LA isn't really a city. It's like a circle on a map that's a collection of cities. Some people consider the Valley and Reseda LA. Other people don't. Some people consider Long Beach part of LA. Some people don't, right? And those are kind of the outskirts of the area. So to me, I feel like if you drive, let's say, in downtown LA versus Hollywood versus the Valley versus, like, say, the west side by, like, Santa Monica, Playa del Rey, El Segundo, Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, basically all these different parts of LA, I think this amount might change a lot. I will say, out of any city I've ever been in, I've never seen more of a spread of what people think about driving. It's almost funny that about half the time when I meet drivers, they're like, oh, driving in LA is awesome, which makes sense. I mean, that's a good amount of average amount per hour. I've met some drivers who make more than that per hour on average, and a lot of drivers love it. On the other end, the other 50% of drivers I meet are like, oh, no, I hate driving in LA. This is the worst place to drive. Even on a Friday night, I get nothing, and it's supposed to be busy on a Friday night. So outside of any city, I feel like LA is probably the biggest roll of the dice, that depending on what area you're in and what's going on. Although, yeah, maybe on average this, I'd say there's a definite asterisk on top of this amount. Definitely want to mention that. Going down to #4, though, Boston. $20.88 per hour. I did well when I drove for Lyft and Uber in Boston. You know, obviously that's where I really kicked it off and everything. The biggest thing, though, and they don't really mention this here, one big thing I would say, of course, is the amount of colleges. I can't remember how many universities are in Boston. I think it's like over 12 or something. But as you can see here, commonly referred to as the college capital of the world. This is a big thing as well when it comes to Boston. I've noticed that, although yes, that's a huge leg up when it comes to driving in Boston, it is sometimes I've noticed feast or famine where during the summers in Boston, I made like very noticeably, significantly less money than during these school times. That's the first thing. The second big thing about Boston is the weather. It snows, and it sounds kind of bad to say, but it's true that the biggest way or the most popular way to get around in Boston is called the T. It's the public transportation, it's the subway system. I would hope when it would snow, the T would either break down or not do the best. I know it sounds bad to say. I like to be very honest on my videos though. The reason why is when it would snow, rates would spike up. You'd make a lot of money as a driver when it would snow. But then, if the T would break down, and everyone in Boston knows the T always breaks down, now everybody, hundreds, thousands, I honestly don't know how many people take the T in the morning for their morning commute. It's an insane amount. Immediately, everyone would take out their phone, boom, Uber, Lyft, right away. And because everyone's ordering at once, you make bank. I mean, I've mentioned this before. There were some winters and sometimes, depending on what's going on, like say, especially when the T would break down, $60 an hour wasn't that uncommon. Especially with Uber, there would be some times, this is before Uber changed their surging algorithm and everything. On average, if it would snow and everything, I could get a 4x surge. So a ride that would, like, say, be only just $20 to go from one end of the city to the other is now $80. And a lot of people would be like, shoot, it's an $80 Uber, but I got to take it. I have to get to work, and the T broke down, and it's snowing, and blah, blah, blah. So Boston can be a great spot to drive for Lyft and Uber, and a lot cheaper to live in my opinion, than LA, San Francisco especially, and San Diego. But it is kind of variable. I feel like it's almost like winter is like the peak time to drive in Boston, because especially if college kids are around and everything. But in the summers, the falls and springs, you definitely don't make as much. And then last, definitely not least, Denver at about $20.54 an hour. My brother, I've mentioned this before, drives for Lyft in Denver. He said, usually about $30 to $40 an hour. The main reason why, he only drives during the peak hours, and he mainly focuses on the bonuses. He tells me that for driving specifically for Lyft, you can make a good amount of money in Denver. He said that Lyft is more popular in Denver than Uber. For me personally, I lived in Denver for a month. He obviously lives there permanently. But when I was there, I didn't really notice too much of a difference. I felt like Uber and Lyft were pretty equally common. But he has told me that just throughout the grapevine, living in Denver for years and everything, that Lyft is traditionally cheaper and more people take it and they prefer it more than Uber. In addition, the cost of living in Denver is a mere 14% higher than the national average and far lower than any other city on the list. So a big thing I will say about Denver, if let's say, and I know some people have mentioned this, I've had some people hit me up saying, hey Mark, Lyft and Uber is my passion. I love driving for Lyft and Uber, and I'm willing to relocate. Where do you think the best place to live is to drive for Lyft and Uber? And it's really tough to say, right? You could see on one end, San Francisco or San Diego is a great spot, but it's unbelievably expensive. Of course, it depends on what you like. A beach town is very different than Boston. Two very different climates. The people are very different. A lot of different things going on in both areas. But I think with Denver being a mere 14% higher than the national average, and in my opinion, Colorado is one of the best states in the entire country. I'd say like Colorado, Florida, California would be my top three. I'd say Massachusetts, I guess I'll throw in that. So definitely, in my opinion, one of the most unique and probably the most unique state in the entire country. Denver and Colorado in general is a great place to live. And so, Alexa, if you are watching this video and you're like, look, that's my passion, is driving for Uber and Lyft. I want to relocate. Denver, I think, is not a bad area when, one, you do look at the fact that you can make a lot of money as a rideshare driver. I've talked to a lot of drivers who make good money. I will say, when I talk to most drivers, 20 to 30 is usually the average that I got. So I think $20.54 makes sense. But if you're smart, and I've done a bunch of pro tip videos about driving for Lyft and Uber, how to maximize your earnings and everything. If you're smart, 30 to 40 is not unreasonable. I'd say maybe closer to low 30s, unless there's like a very unique thing going on. But there it is. To recap again, the top 5 highest earning cities for drivers are San Diego, the Bay Area, like say San Francisco, Silicon Valley, Los Angeles, Boston, and lastly, Denver.